You probably know Vistaprint for business cards, but did you know we print everything you need to get your brand in front of your fans? We print banners and signs that help your business stand out. We print postcards and flyers that get people talking. And we print must-have merch like tote bags, t-shirts, and water bottles. Whether you want a few or a few thousand, we print on everything so that customers can go from noticing your brand to falling in love with it. Right now, new customers can get 20% off with code NEW20. Because if you need it, we print it at vistaprint.ca.
Welcome to one and all, and thank you for joining us for this month's Global in the Granite State episode, a program of the World Affairs Council of New Hampshire. We are so glad you are here and look forward to providing you with yet another engaging global conversation. For those who don't know, or maybe simply forgot, my name is Tim Horgan, and I am the Executive Director of the World Affairs Council of New Hampshire, as well as your host for this series. As a reminder to all, the World Affairs Council of New Hampshire is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that serves as your platform for global discussions. We rely heavily on community support to ensure these programs remain engaging and accessible. If you are not yet a supporter of our organization, I invite you to visit our website at wacnh.org to show the value you see in our work. A big thank you to all the members, donors, sponsors, and other supporters who ensure the Council has the critical funds necessary to provide engaging programs that highlight global issues. A special thank you to our longtime sponsor of this program, McLean Middleton, for continuing their support. Your leadership remains a model for other civically minded groups who value challenging but civil conversations. McLean Middleton is one of New England's premier full-service law firms with over 115 attorneys throughout offices in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. McLean Middleton's attorneys have been providing trusted legal services to businesses throughout the region for over 100 years. Learn more at mclean.com. Okay, let's dive on in. Marks the 4-year anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, one of the biggest geopolitical challenges, but certainly not the only, that has shaped the world over the past half-decade. So much has changed since those early days, where many analysts believe the entire operation to take over Ukraine and install a more pliant government would take up to 48 hours. While these estimates proved wildly inaccurate for a range of reasons, the impact of this ongoing war has entirely reshaped the world in innumerable ways. To mark this glum anniversary, we took a moment to speak with Ukraine's youngest member of parliament and recent alumni of the Open World Leadership Program, who visited New Hampshire in 2025, Sviatoslav Yuras.
It was a great demonstration why New Hampshire is the first in the nation in all sort of ways, and the fact that there are these people who are committed to showing New Hampshire the world and showing the world to New Hampshire is quite an endorsement of all of the achievements that New Hampshire had over the years. It was a wonderful chance to finally have the encounter with New Hampshire. I've been to the States many a times through the years, but sadly, this was my first time in New Hampshire, and truly something to be remembered, something to be cherished, something to be continued. As I had a chance to meet all of you great people and develop relationships and friendships, hopefully lasting into the future.
For these partnerships to last into the future, Ukraine, of course, must survive into the future. This requires that the country has the ability to forge a path forward that ensures its sovereignty and security, not an easy task with the current state of affairs.
First, there is no nation that desires peace more than Ukrainians. We haven't imagined that this war will start, much less that it will last all that decade that passed us by. The reality is The ambition of Russia's is very clear. Russia's never hid it very far. Putin has written essays about this. He has made videos about this, and it's very clearly denying Ukrainians a chance to choose their own future. And it's not about this part of Ukraine and that part of Ukraine and the other part of Ukraine. It's about destroying our nation entirely and to, as Putin sees it, reunite these people that he believes are one people. Ukrainians in every poll, in every measurement, in every election have clearly stated their opinion on the matter. Ukrainians want to be an independent state. From our referendum in 91, that clearly showcased the entirety of Ukraine, from the south to the north, from the west to the east, agreeing with the basic premise that Ukraine should be independent. And as Russia doesn't want to acknowledge that right to us, as Britain didn't want to acknowledge that right to the Americans 250 years ago.
It's interesting to think, especially in light of the United States' 250th anniversary this year, that one country should or could have say over the independence of another. However, this seems to be the world that we are re-entering today, where might makes right. New Hampshire gave Sviatoslav a great reference point for giving voice to Ukrainian desires.
To my mind, the New Hampshire motto is something you can never forget. Especially in Ukraine, we live by that motto in every single day. Live free or die. It is certainly that foundation which our nation has been founded, and that motto for which we are paying a very dear price every day, but we need to, because we agree on our independent future, and we don't believe that any part of Ukraine given to Russia will result in lasting peace.
However, this remains at the heart of Putin's demand, the recognition of Russian control over parts of Ukraine. This includes parts of the country that Russian forces have not yet pushed Ukrainians out of. Now, depending on who you ask and when you ask them, the outlook for Ukrainian success can vary widely. Some will tell you this only ends when Putin is fully defeated. Others tell you Putin will be satisfied to consolidate his gains if he can gain international recognition for his control over these areas. Still, others believe that Putin will never be satisfied until he has fully restored the former borders of the USSR. All of this focuses on what Putin wants. But of course, the Ukrainians have agency in all of this, and it's important to understand their thinking and what they want.
We have leapt on every opportunity to join the peace process, and we have pursued every peace avenue created for good or bad reasons to try and explore solutions to the questions we fundamentally have. And the first is questions whether the war will continue as soon as the agreement is done. We have no reasons to trust the Russians because of our own perspective. History points very clearly that the Russians are very eager to break promises they make. Let me remind you, right before the full-scale invasion happened in 22, we had for 8 years negotiated with the Russians after the previous bout of invasion and occupation occurred. And because of that, in all the negotiations we are trying to entertain together with the current American administration and with different other actors who are working with us to pursue these ambitions for peace, the basic point remains of real guarantees, lasting guarantees that will actually deter Russia from coming back in all those innumerable casualties that Russia has had in all these years of fighting. Russia has not achieved a conquest of any new regional capital, any part of Ukraine of notice. Ukraine has actually conquered much of what Russia has taken in the initial point of the full-scale invasion. And again, for me, it's important to say all these points because besides being member of parliament, I also am a member of the army. I've joined when the Russians first invaded 22, and I lost somebody very dear and near to me, and I first fought around the capital, then fought in the east for the first time. Then my unit came back in 23 and was pummeled, and I was transferred to another unit with whom I was fighting in all of 2024. And 2025, basically, I was promoted to a sergeant, giving me much more freedom, but at the same time, still seeing the war close and personal is my reality, as it is for most Ukrainians for this or that reason.
When this war is so personal for the people of Ukraine, and they are dealing with an authoritarian who has broken agreement after agreement, from the 1993 Budapest Memorandum, which Russia committed itself, along with the US and the UK, to protecting the independence of Ukraine, on to the Minsk agreements that were designed to bring hostilities to an end, and many, many more. Does it even make sense to negotiate with them?
The truth is, we need to explore every avenue and also to try and showcase answers to all of these questions, both to our international partners, the world that's watching, and the Russians are posing to us. To showcase why we cannot simply agree to anything and hope for the best. And we shall continue engaging in all these efforts while trying to find any actual step that will present us with security guarantees that will give us a lasting, true peace. The history knows plenty of examples. I mean, you have the reality of the Cold War, which didn't become into a hot war because you had the NATO troops present in Germany and in Western Europe. You have the Korean War, which is not starting once again because of the American contingent in Korea, not to mention the great chance it gave to South Korean, well, the Republic of Korea and its democratic forces to build up an army there that is certainly something to be reckoned with for any invader. The same applies for any conflict that is staying and stable and is not rising anew. So in this situation, truthfully, we need something more on the table than just a nice piece of paper. We need commitments of troops, resources, and the fact this will provide Ukraine an opportunity to count on international alliances if Russia tries anything again.
I cannot begin to imagine the ways in which this war has reshaped the lives of so many people on both sides of the fight, but most dramatically for Ukrainians. It would be surprising if there's a single Ukrainian who would not share a major life-shaping story on how their lives have been flipped entirely upside down simply because another country decided they could invade an independent country with impunity. Despite all of this, Ukrainians remain committed to fighting for their country and to repel this major invasion. How can they keep the morale high enough for this critical fight as year 4 grinds to an end?
Well, the point is, we had no illusions somebody else will fight our battles for us. That's why, from the very first days of the invasion, Ukrainians have decided to try and fight back. And the point is that we look back at both the sacrifices we made now and those people who have given it all for that cause of our freedom. That certainly is not something you can just give up on because we cherish who these people were, what their ambition was, and that ambition always was built around independent Ukraine. Not to mention all of our ancestors who survived all those predations of history through the centuries past and given us independent Ukraine. And that's why, both with respect to the past, hope for the future, and sacrifices of the present, we should build that country, build our potential to fight back at whatever Russians throw at us.
And currently, Russia is throwing a lot at them. Of course, there are allies and supporters on both sides, but it is important to remind everyone of the countries that Russia has aligned itself with to try and achieve their maximalist goals, while minimizing the impact on their own people. These countries have made the decision to bring their resources, technologies, and even people to bear on this fight. While Ukraine also has its supporters, it is interesting the types of government that have lined up on the other side.
Basically, when you look at the people the Russians are involving in this fight, truly, the list is endless by now. But it's always a list of people who came here to join our fight for the future. Sadly, in the center of our capital, from where I'm talking with you, there is the Independence Square, famous Maidan, which was the host for all of our revolutions, especially the last great revolution of 2014. And in the center of it, there is the makeshift memorial where people put flags of various countries from which people hail that gave their lives up in this fight for Ukraine's liberty. And Russians certainly bringing all kinds of infamous coalition, the axis of evil, if I dare use the old term, to try and destroy our nation. But so is the coalition of the willing. It's truly composed of different people coming from the world when they see the horror of what Russians are doing to us. All these nations, no matter whether they are causing horror to the population or destroying Ukraine in the process, they hate you the most. You are the big Satan, as the Iranian regime calls America. So the point for them all isn't so much Ukraine or democratic actors in their countries. It's trying to punch at America that they see and the way they justify this to their own people. There was a very famous joke that Zelensky shared with one American interviewer. The joke is that basically you have Russian army showing up, Russian army for years fighting, casualty toll is anywhere from 500,000 upwards, and they are fighting, and they're telling their people they're fighting NATO, and the question is, how many people did NATO lose? And the answer is NATO hasn't shown up yet. So because of that, it's the reality that these regimes are fighting you in every single way, every single day, in their minds very often, but still.
Now, we cannot paint a fully rosy picture for Ukraine at this point, even leaving the major challenge of the war aside, as not too long ago a major corruption scandal broke in the energy sector of the state. The scandal, involving $100 million in kickbacks to a close associate of Zelensky, came to light just 3 months after the government had passed a bill that stripped the independence of the Anti-Corruption Investigation Bureau and the prosecutor's office. After major protests in the country, this bill was reversed and the agencies had their independence restored. These incidents, while extremely concerning, show that democracy is alive and well in Ukraine, with a government responsive to its people's demands.
We fired both of these trouble lovers, which were ministers of energy and justice involved in this travesty, not to mention the fact that we have gladly and thoroughly funded the institutions that done their job and caught these horrible actors that were destroying normality through their corruption. The system isn't described by a problem, it's by reaction to a problem. And the fact that we have managed to immediately fire both the responsible ministers as well as to continue the work of these anti-corruption institutions is very important for our future.
Now, as we discussed in our podcast on the trial of Saddam, it is important to remember that countries and organizations should not be judged by the absence of bad actors. We know illegal things happen all the time, but they should rather be judged by how they handle them. Rather than just sweeping the corruption under the rug, Ukraine has confronted it, brought transparency, and are looking to bring justice to the system. However, the damage was done, as some voices tried to use this as a reason to cut off aid and support to Ukraine. However,
we have all kinds of missions from the European Union and America in Ukraine investigating and having a very immediate connection to all the people that are investing those resources in both the military realities of Ukraine and into the civilian realities of Ukraine. That will only continue, that will only multiply, and all of these investigative bodies that are tasked with tackling and finding and destroying any semblance of corruption are hard at work, as the latest investigations that they've been revealing to Ukraine and the world have shown.
So what does this have to do with the people of New Hampshire, or the United States as a whole? Why does the fate of Ukraine matter to us, and why should we care? There are different reasons that people will identify with, and for some people they will either feel they have no role to play or that they simply don't care. I think I can safely assume that if you've made it this far into the conversation, that this does not apply to you. So, here is my why, which you can take or leave. For me, the fate of Ukraine matters because I do not want to live in a world where wars are started on the whim of a global leader who believes his country has gotten a raw deal, as Putin does. I want the world to see that the strong do not always prevail and cannot assume that their military can shape the world how they want it to be. I also don't want leaders like Putin to get rewarded for starting wars, especially if they can't finish them. It matters to me for what it signals to the rest of the world in regards to the U.S. interests and commitments. Also, I don't want to live in a world where the U.S. sits it out and cedes the world to China, Russia, Iran, etc. Just because we refuse to engage doesn't mean all other countries will stop meddling too. There are a whole host of economic, geopolitical, and other reasons to care, but these are the things that matter to me. So what can people do about it?
First, I was greatly humbled by all these stories from people in New Hampshire that are doing already so much. I visited the Ukrainian church in New Hampshire, for example. I have met people in New Hampshire who have already built institutions to help Ukrainians and Ukraine in dealing with our tragedy. But as far as the stories, they are plentiful. From visiting the other Great Lake, the Great Lake in New Hampshire that you've taken us to getting to know the fact that you have the biggest legislature in the nation. You have this very direct communication between everyone and their politicians, having the benefits of that. Not to mention that you can stand up for all your interests in Washington because you have many great people from New Hampshire who have pursued various ambitions all around the world and on the States and have that key position now. And that's why so many senators and congresspeople, and you had, through your great wisdom, connected us with both them and their staff and showed to us again that superpower that every American has, that through which you can immediately help our cause, not to mention the other cause you support, is that you can reach out to your congressperson or senator and to ask them to care and provide them the facts and to stand up for you believe should be done in the situation in Ukraine. And the fact that you have such a great democratic tradition in New Hampshire shows that this superpower is ever present. And every American has a chance to use this superpower. And if the horror you see created in Ukraine, it has to find some resolution. You need to reach out to your elected legislators and to demand that they take action. And that is any political step that certainly brings attention to our plight. The reality of this war makes every step, every deed, every act of support, something comes together into reality of Ukraine not perishing in this century as it perished in centuries prior. Because centuries prior, we were alone, facing a combination of enemies or some enemy in particular. The fact that all of you care, the fact that all of you share, the fact that all of you try and provide this or that kind of support certainly helps in every way. It comes together into reality that we have a fighting chance. And as you can see, for the last 4 years, we are using it, that chance, to continue our nation's existence and to building that future which we desire so badly. And in this context, truly, I can speak on many matters, but the fact is, thank you is the first expression that I must say to all those who have cared, who have worked and helped, and to all those who are thinking of either understanding or joining in any way. All of that is most needed and helpful. Because again, we are fighting against the biggest country in the world, and that certainly is not an easy task. All of the facts that we have right now of support and commitment by different nations is as needed as can be. Individuals are nations.
I will say that the New Hampshire congressional delegation has been very supportive of Ukrainian independence. But it never hurts for them to hear from concerned constituents who want to make their voice heard. What your position is and how you want to use your voice is up to you, of course. We only encourage an informed opinion. Thank you for investing the time to listen to this month's episode. I appreciate your interest and hope you will share this conversation with a friend, family member, or maybe even a complete stranger. This has been The Global in the Granite State, a podcast of the World Affairs Council of New Hampshire. As always, Tim Horgan does it all to make this program possible through your generous support. Our theme music remains Admin by A.A. Alto, and our interlude music is Night Detective by Amaski. Until next time.